They built 47 homes on my lake property while I was recovering from back surgery. Not next to my lake. On my property. With boat docks, swimming beaches, and a marina. Sold every house for $625,000 to $850,000 each. $34 million total. The HOA president, a woman who moved here from Seattle and thinks she invented the concept of clean water, told me I was a local obstructionist trying to prevent sustainable development. Said her environmental lawyer confirmed the land was abandoned, so their eco-resort had legal right to my shoreline. She'd already collected $34 million in sales and was planning phase 2. Here's what I did. Absolutely nothing. Let them finish building. Watch them landscape, install docks, teach their kids to swim in my lake. Then I walked into court with 66 years of DNR water rights permits, proving I control the only natural inlet feeding Lake Clearwater. What would you do if someone built a luxury resort on your property and then tried to ban you from your own lake? Drop your state below. Let's see where my water rights family is watching from. My name's Marcus Thornhill, third-generation Minnesota fisherman. 52 years old, retired commercial captain after a 200-pound halibut crate crushed 3 discs in my lower back. Navy veteran, 6 years on a destroyer in the Pacific. I drive a 2007 Ford F-250 with rusted wheel wells and a cracked windshield I've been meaning to replace for 3 years. Nothing special about me except I know Lake Clearwater better than I know my own face in the mirror. My disability check is $2,100 a month. My daughter Rachel's in her second year of med school, $38,000 a year tuition that keeps me up at night. I've been doing odd jobs to help her out. Ice fishing guide in winter, boat repair in summer. My hands are permanently stained with fish scales and motor oil. I live in my grandfather's original 1958 cabin. 2 bedrooms, wood stove, no dishwasher. The kind of place where you can hear the lake breathing at night. Earl Thornhill bought 23 acres in 1958 for $3,400 cash. Paid it to a widow whose husband died in a logging accident. Earl was a fisherman who understood something most people don't. Water moves. He bought the property specifically because it included Stony Creek, the primary inlet feeding Lake Clearwater. Control the inlet. Control the lake's health. That's what Earl always said. The lake don't care about your plans. Respect it, or it'll teach you. Earl kept waterproof logbooks for 66 years. Every fish caught, every water temperature reading, every seasonal variation logged in pencil because ink runs when it gets wet. Those logbooks smelled like mineral oil and old canvas. When DNR started requiring permits in 1972, Earl had documentation going back 14 years proving his historical water usage rights. The state couldn't argue with that kind of record keeping. When Earl died in 2019, he left me the property with a note tucked inside his favorite logbook. The lake don't care about your plans. Respect it, or it'll teach you. Also left me a fishing knife, a 1960 Evinrude motor that still runs, and 66 years of legal water rights documentation that would later become worth more than gold. Those 23 acres are worth about $6.8 million now. Prime lakefront, old growth pines, natural spring creek, 800 feet of shoreline. You could smell the pine sap in summer heat, hear the creek's constant whisper over smooth stones, feel the dock planks worn soft by 60 years of wet boots. Mornings, mist rose off the water like ghosts. Earl's cabin sat 100 feet from shore, elevated on stone foundation he'd laid himself. The boathouse held 3 generations of fishing equipment, all of it legal, all of it registered with DNR. I didn't visit for 8 months because in May 2022, a crate of halibut shifted during rough water. 200 pounds landed square on my lower back. 3 herniated discs, surgery in June, 8 months of physical therapy. Couldn't drive for 4 months, couldn't walk without a cane for 6. Rachel was finishing her first year of med school in Minneapolis, but she drove up every other weekend to check on the property, pay bills, keep the cabin winterized. But I paid property taxes every October. $4,800 annually. Never late, always online. I had the email receipts, paid DNR water usage fees every spring, $340. Renewed my historical water rights permit every 3 years. Filed March 2022. Approved April 2022, 2 months before my surgery. Bank statements, DNR stamped approvals, county records. Everything documented, everything current. February 2023, 8 months after surgery, Rachel finally cleared me to drive. Physical therapist said I could handle the 40-minute trip from my rental in town back to the lake property. I hadn't been there since the accident. Rachel had been handling everything, but she was stressed about Step 1 medical boards, so I told her I'd take over the property checks. February 18th, I drove up County Road 7 toward the lake, radio playing classic rock, sun hitting the snow like diamonds. Temperature was maybe 15 degrees, but the sky was that perfect Minnesota winter blue that makes your eyes water. I turned onto Old Shore Road expecting to see Earl's cabin through the trees, maybe some deer tracks in the snow, smoke from the wood stove I'd asked Rachel to keep running. Instead, I saw a carved wooden sign, Clearwater Estates: an eco-luxury community. Sales office open daily. My stomach dropped like an anchor through ice. I pulled over, checked my GPS 4 times. Same coordinates. Latitude 46.83, longitude 93.17. This was my property. Where Earl's pine forest used to be, 47 modern houses sat in perfect rows. Gray siding, floor-to-ceiling windows, metal roofs designed to minimize environmental impact according to the sales brochure I'd later find. Each house had a dock jutting into my lake. The shoreline was cleared, landscaped, installed with decorative boulders that probably cost more than my truck. A paved road curved through the development with actual streetlights. Not the rural darkness Earl and I had always known, but suburban brightness that killed the stars. There was a community boathouse 3 times the size of Earl's, families unloading kayaks, kids on paddleboards despite the cold, someone grilling on a deck that jutted out over what used to be Earl's favorite fishing spot, the deep hole where he'd pulled a 32-pound northern pike in 1987. I sat in my truck, hands shaking, back throbbing from the drive. The cracked windshield seemed like a perfect metaphor for everything in that moment. Everything broken, everything wrong, and me looking at it through damaged glass trying to make sense of the impossible. I drove to the sales office, a converted building where Earl's old boathouse used to stand. Inside, reclaimed wood floors that probably came from someone else's grandfather's barn. Photographs of the pristine wilderness covering the walls, all of them taken on my property. A banner stretched across the back wall. 47 homes sold. Exclamation point phase 2. Coming soon, exclamation point. A woman in her late 40s approached me. Athletic build, wearing Patagonia fleece and Arc'teryx pants that still had the fold creases. Her hair was pulled into a tight ponytail, diamond studs in her ears catching the light, Apple Watch glowing on her wrist with what looked like a 10,000-step celebration. "Welcome to Clearwater Estates," she said, smile bright as those streetlights outside. "I'm Victoria Ashford Chen, community founder and HOA president. Are you interested in our Phase 2 lakefront lots? We have 30 premium parcels remaining, all with direct water access and dock rights. Prices start at $675,000. "I own this property," I said, pulling up the deed photo on my phone. "My grandfather bought it in 1958. Victoria's smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened like lake ice in November. She glanced at my phone, then at me. Work boots with salt stains, Carhartt jacket with a torn elbow, graying beard I hadn't trimmed in weeks, cane in my right hand because my back couldn't handle standing without it. "Oh, honey," she said, voice dripping with false sympathy like maple syrup over poison. "I think you're confused. This land was abandoned. County records showed no activity for over a year. Under Minnesota Adverse Possession Statute 541.02, abandoned lakefront property reverts to development opportunities when it threatens environmental preservation. That's not how adverse possession works," I started, but she kept talking. "Our environmental lawyers conducted a comprehensive ecological assessment. The previous owner, Earl Thornhill was operating an illegal commercial fishing operation that was depleting native species and degrading water quality. We purchased the land through a county environmental recovery program specifically designed to restore lakes damaged by irresponsible local practices." She said local like it was a diagnosis, like being from here was something to apologize for. "I paid property taxes. Last October, I have DNR water rights renewed in April 2022. I have..." "Sweetie, I understand this is emotional for you. Change is hard, especially for people who've lived here their whole lives. But Clearwater Estates represents the future. Sustainable development, minimal environmental footprint, educated homeowners who respect natural resources. She pulled out a business card, held it between two manicured fingers like it was contaminated. This is my attorney, Caroline Westbrook. If you'd like to pursue a nuisance claim, she handles those. But I should warn you, we have title insurance, county approval, and 47 families who purchased homes in good faith. Any legal action will be viewed as harassment. She walked to the door, opened it. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of diesel from construction equipment in the distance. I really do need to ask you to leave. We have an open house this afternoon, and your truck is blocking the entrance. You understand. I looked past her at the lake. My lake. Earl's Lake. The water looked strange, flatter somehow, less alive. The surface had a dull sheen I'd never seen before, even in winter. I took her card. Didn't argue. Didn't cause a scene. My back was screaming and my hands were shaking, but I just nodded, walked to my truck, and drove away. 3 miles down the road, there's a public boat launch. I pulled in, parked facing the water, and sat there for 20 minutes trying to breathe. Trying to understand how someone could steal 23 acres, build 47 houses, and call it environmental recovery. I pulled out my phone and called Rachel. She answered on the first ring. "Dad, how's the cabin?" "Gone," I said. My voice sounded strange in my own ears. "Call Grandpa Earl's lawyer, Dennis Halverson. Tell him we need every water rights document he has. And Rachel, I need you to come up this weekend. Bring your camera. We're going to document everything." "Dad, what happened?" "Someone built a neighborhood on our property. 47 houses. They're calling it sustainable development." Silence on the line. Then, "I'm getting in my car right now." "No. Finish your classes. Come Friday. But Rachel, find those logbooks Earl left. The waterproof ones. We're going to need them." After we hung up, I sat there watching the lake. Ice was forming in the shallows, that first thin skin that crunches when you walk on it. I thought about Earl's note. The lake don't care about your plans. Respect it, or it'll teach you. Victoria Ashford Chen was about to get an education, and tuition was going to cost her everything. Monday morning, I got a FedEx envelope. Victoria's lawyer, Caroline Westbrook, offering $25,000 to sign a quitclaim deed and resolve this misunderstanding amicably. The letter was full of phrases like unsubstantiated claim, adverse possession doctrine, and environmental necessity. $25,000 for $6.8 million in property. For Earl's 66 years of careful stewardship, for my family's history. I called Rachel. She was in anatomy class, but texted back immediately. "Don't sign anything." I called Earl's old lawyer, Dennis Halverson. He was 73 years old, semi-retired, still practicing out of a small office above the hardware store in town. He'd handled Earl's estate, knew every detail of the property. "Marcus, I was hoping they wouldn't try this," Dennis said. His voice sounded tired. "But I'm not a water rights specialist. You need someone meaner. Someone who understands environmental law and isn't afraid of developers with deep pockets." "Who?" "Sharon Kovalenko. She's in Duluth. Used to work for indigenous tribes on treaty water rights. Made mining companies cry during depositions. She's expensive, but she's the only one I'd trust with this." "How expensive?" Dennis paused. "Her consultation fee alone is $800. But Marcus, if anyone can beat these people, it's her. I had $18,000 in savings. Rachel's tuition was due in August. My disability check barely covered rent and food." But I thought about Earl's note, about Victoria's condescending smile, about 47 families who'd been sold a lie. "Set it up," I said. Sharon's consultation fee was $800. I paid it with the credit card I'd been saving for Rachel's next tuition payment and immediately felt sick about it. But Dennis was right. If I was going to fight, I needed someone who knew how to win. Her office was in a converted warehouse overlooking Lake Superior, 3 hours north of Lake Clearwater, but Rachel drove me because my back couldn't handle that much driving yet. The building smelled like old books and strong coffee, the kind that's been sitting on the burner too long and tastes like anger. Sharon Kovalenko was 58, gray hair and a long braid down her back, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt like she'd just come from chopping wood. Reading glasses hung from a beaded chain around her neck. Her office had more books than furniture, and a window that looked out over Superior's gray water. "Dennis says you have a water rights case," she said. "No pleasantries, no small talk. All business. Sit down and tell me everything." I laid it out. The property, Earl's 1958 purchase, the 66 years of documentation, my 8 months recovering from surgery, coming back to find 47 houses where my forest used to be. Victoria's claim about environmental recovery, the $25,000 quitclaim offer. "Show me your DNR permits," Sharon said. I pulled out Earl's logbooks, the waterproof ones with green canvas covers and brass corners. Rachel had found them in the cabin's cellar, wrapped in waxed paper, every page perfect. 66 years of entries in Earl's careful handwriting. Water temperatures, fish counts, seasonal variations, weather patterns. Then my own DNR renewals, March 2022 application, April 2022 approval, historical water usage rights for Stony Creek Inlet, primary source for Lake Clearwater. Sharon read them and I watched her face change. Not a smile exactly, but something predatory, like a wolf that just caught a scent. "Do they know you control the inlet?" she asked. "I don't think so." Victoria kept talking about pristine waters and natural lake ecosystem. I don't think she even looked at a survey map, just saw lakefront property and dollar signs. "How much water flows through your property?" "Stony Creek provides about 70% of Lake Clearwater's fresh water input. Other 30% comes from rainfall and minor surface runoff. Creek's spring-fed year-round flow. Earl's logbooks have daily measurements going back to 1958. Sharon leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. "So if Stony Creek stops flowing, or gets redirected, or becomes contaminated, Lake Clearwater becomes a stagnant pond within 2 to 3 years, probably faster." Earl always said the lake was completely dependent on the creek. DNR did studies in 1975 that confirmed it. I can get you copies. And she sold 47 homes with boat docks, swimming beaches, and pristine lake access as the primary selling point. That's what the banners say. Phase 2 is supposed to add 30 more homes. Another 30 families buying into a lie. Sharon spread everything across her conference table. Earl's original 1958 deed showing the property boundaries that included Stony Creek from source to lake. DNR permits from 1972 forward, all approved, all current. Water usage records documenting 66 years of continuous legal activity. Historical rights documentation that predated Minnesota's modern environmental regulations. My own October 2022 property tax payment, proof I'd maintained ownership. April 2022 water rights renewal, filed 2 months before my surgery. Marcus, adverse possession in Minnesota requires 15 years of continuous, open, hostile occupation, and the claimant has to pay property taxes during that entire time. If you've been paying taxes and maintaining your legal water usage permits, their adverse possession claim is dead on arrival. It's not even close. So I file an injunction? Stop phase 2 before they can build? We could. Sharon tapped the water rights permits with one finger. But here's what I'd rather do, and you're going to think I'm insane. Try me. Let them build phase 2. Let them sell all 77 homes. Let homeowners move in, get comfortable, build their lives around pristine Lake Clearwater access. Let Victoria collect every penny. I stared at her. You want them to keep building on my property? No. They already built on your property. That's done. That's trespassed. That's documented. What I want is leverage. Right now, if we stop them, Victoria declares bankruptcy, ties your land up in litigation for 5 years, and you get nothing but legal bills that'll bankrupt you before you ever see a courtroom. But if we wait, document everything, let the development finish, then we demonstrate that Lake Clearwater is dying because she violated your water rights. Suddenly she's desperate. The lake is dying? Not yet. But it will be. Every dock, every boat, every septic system, every lawn treatment chemical, it all impacts water quality. Earl's property controlled the inlet because he understood natural water flow. Victoria's development is disrupting that flow. She's clear-cutting shoreline vegetation that filtered runoff. She's compacting soil that used to absorb rainfall. She's introducing 77 households worth of pollution into a delicate ecosystem. In 2 years, maybe 3, That pristine lake is going to be an algae-covered pond. And when it happens, 77 families are going to sue Victoria for selling them worthless property. My head was spinning. But those families are innocent. They didn't know. Exactly. Which is why when we win, you're going to own 77 completed houses on your property, and Victoria is going to prison for real estate fraud. The families will get to stay. You'll negotiate a land trust or long-term leases at cost. They keep their homes, you keep your property, and Victoria loses everything. I thought about the young couple I'd seen moving furniture, the retired teacher planting a garden, the kids learning to swim. How much is this going to cost me? $45,000 retainer, maybe $60,000 total if it goes to trial. But when we win, and we will win, the court awards all attorney fees to you. Victoria pays everything. Your costs, my costs, expert witnesses, water quality testing, all of it. I had $18,000 in savings. Rachel's tuition was $38,000, due in 3 months. My disability check was $2,100 a month. The math didn't work. I'll figure it out, I heard myself say. One more thing, Sharon said. Her voice dropped. Don't contact Victoria. Don't post on social media. Don't tell anyone except Rachel and maybe one trusted friend. In water rights cases, surprise is everything. She doesn't know you have these permits. She doesn't know Earl documented everything. She thinks you're just some local with a grudge. Let's keep it that way until we walk into court. I hired her that day. Signed a retainer agreement that made my stomach hurt. Drove home with Rachel. 3 hours of silence because I couldn't find words for what I was feeling. Fear, anger, determination, all mixed together like chemicals that might explode. That night, I took out a loan against the property. 15% interest, predatory rates, but it was the only way to pay Sharon's retainer. I sent her the money the next morning. I spent the next 3 weeks becoming an amateur detective. Minnesota County property records are public, available online if you know where to look. I pulled everything on Ashford Development Group. Victoria's company was registered in Delaware. First red flag. Companies incorporate in Delaware to hide ownership and avoid taxes. The real money was coming from Clearwater Capital Partners, a venture capital firm owned by Victoria's husband, Kenneth Chen. They'd even named the firm after my lake. The audacity was breathtaking. I dug deeper. Kenneth had been sued twice for securities fraud. First case in 2015, settled quietly for an undisclosed amount. Second case in 2019, also settled. The pattern was clear. Make money fast, cut corners, settle lawsuits before they go to trial, move on to the next project. The county environmental recovery program Victoria had mentioned didn't exist. I called the county clerk, a woman named Martha who'd worked there for 30 years. She'd never heard of it, but she remembered Victoria. Came in here with that fancy lawyer, Martha said, filed a claim saying the property was abandoned and environmentally hazardous. Paid Commissioner Steinbeck $15,000 as a consulting fee to fast-track approval. We all thought it smelled bad, but Steinbeck signed off on it. Commissioner Roger Steinbeck was up for re-election. Campaign finance records showed Victoria had donated another $10,000 to his campaign fund, $25,000 total to steal my land. The title insurance company, Northern Lakes Title Group, had approved the sale without a proper survey. Their records showed they'd accepted Victoria's word that the boundaries were correct, never sent anyone to actually walk the property, never checked DNR permits or water rights. I found the actual survey maps in the county archives. Had to drive to the courthouse, spend 4 hours in a basement that smelled like mold and old paper, but I found them. Victoria's development was 100% on my property. Every house, every dock, every inch of paved road. The surveyors had marked my boundary stakes with orange paint. Those stakes were still there, standing in people's yards like accusations. I sent everything to Sharon in an encrypted email, 300 pages of documents, photos, county records, campaign finance disclosures. She called me an hour later. Marcus, this is better than I thought. They didn't just make a mistake, they committed fraud. Premeditated, documented, intentional fraud. If we can prove Kenneth and Victoria knew about your ownership and proceeded anyway, this becomes criminal. How do we prove that? Let me worry about that. You just keep documenting. Photograph the construction. Track the water quality. Stay away from Victoria. And Marcus, Start collecting water samples, weekly, from Stony Creek and from the lake. We need to build a record of declining water quality. I started collecting samples in March, bought testing kits online, learned to measure dissolved oxygen, nitrogen levels, pH balance. Earl's logbooks gave me baseline data from decades ago. The comparison was stark. Dissolved oxygen was dropping. Nitrogen was increasing from septic runoff and lawn fertilizers. Algae blooms were starting earlier, lasting longer, covering more surface area. The lake was dying. Slowly, measurably, predictably. March through May 2023, I drove to Lake Clearwater twice a week, parked at the public boat launch where I legally had every right to be, walked the shoreline with my camera taking time-stamped photos. Phase 2 construction had started in April, bulldozers clearing the north section of my property, another 30 houses going up. The smell of diesel and fresh-cut lumber mixed with pine sap, nail guns echoing across the water like woodpeckers on steroids, dump trucks hauling gravel, cement mixers, the sounds of my childhood forest being erased. I documented everything, water levels dropping as they diverted parts of Stony Creek for landscaping, sediment flowing into the lake from construction runoff, turning the shallows brown, small fish kills appearing near the docks, nothing major yet, but visible, dead bluegills and sunfish floating in the reeds. Week 3, Victoria spotted me. She was on one of the new docks, talking to a couple who just moved into house number 32. She saw me standing at the tree line with my camera, and her whole body went rigid. She made a phone call pointing at me from 300 yards away. 20 minutes later, Deputy Mike Haugen pulled up in his cruiser. Mike and I had ice fished together for 20 years. He'd been in Earl's cabin 100 times, knew this was my property, knew this whole situation was wrong. "Marcus," he said, getting out slow. His voice was quiet, uncomfortable. "Mrs. Ashford Chen says you're harassing residents, taking photographs of children, making people feel unsafe. I'm on a public access point, Mike. Taking pictures of my own property. Check county records. Parcel 1422800067. Owner Marcus Thornhill." Mike looked miserable. "If there's a property dispute, that's civil court, you know that." "But Marcus, she filed a formal complaint. Sheriff Randall's office told me to come out here, give you a warning." He didn't say it, but I knew. Victoria had donated $10,000 to Sheriff Randall's re-election campaign. Money talks. Disabled fishermen don't. "She's stealing my land, Mike. I know." He looked at his boots. "But I got orders. One more complaint and I have to take official action. I don't want to, but I will if I'm told to." "Understood." Mike got back in his cruiser and sat there for a minute before driving away. I kept taking pictures. May 15th, I got a call from Tom Berkshire, DNR officer I'd known for 30 years. He'd approved Earl's permits, had fished with us, knew our family's respect for the lake. "Marcus, we received a complaint that you're operating illegal fishing equipment on Lake Clearwater, using banned nets, dumping fish waste in protected waters." "Tom, I haven't fished commercially in a year. Back injury, remember? I can barely walk without a cane." "I know. But I'm required to inspect. Someone submitted photos that allegedly show fishing nets on your property. If I don't follow up, I could lose my job." "Who filed it?" "Anonymous tip. But it came through Clearwater Estates HOA as a concerned citizen environmental report." He paused. "Marcus, this is the third complaint filed against Lakeshore property owners since Victoria moved here. The pattern's always the same. File complaint, property owner gets investigated, she offers to buy them out cheap while they're stressed." I drove up that afternoon with Tom. We walked my entire shoreline. No nets, no illegal equipment. Just Earl's old gear in the boathouse, all legal, all registered, gathering dust. Tom inspected everything, took photos, shook his head. "There's nothing here. Complaint is completely false. I'll file my report, but Marcus, watch your back. She's trying to build a harassment case against you." He handed me his card. "If you need a witness statement about your water rights or historical usage, call me. I've got 30 years of records showing your family's been nothing but responsible. May 22nd, another FedEx envelope. Caroline Westbrook's law firm. 3 pages of legal threats on letterhead that probably cost 50 cents a sheet. Mr. Thornhill, your continued trespassing and harassment of Clearwater Estates residents constitutes stalking under Minnesota Statute 609.49. Cease all contact with our clients immediately or face criminal charges and civil liability exceeding $100,000. Attached was a photo of my truck parked at the public boat launch. License plate circled in red marker. Handwritten note in the margin. Document everything. I drove straight to Sharon's office. 3-hour drive, back screaming the whole way, but I needed her to see this. She read the letter, and then she started laughing. Not polite laughter, but genuine amusement, the kind that made her wipe her eyes. They're documenting their own fraud, she said. Every letter they send, every photo they take, every interaction, it's evidence that they knew there was a dispute and kept building anyway. This is beautiful. Doesn't feel beautiful. Feels like harassment. It is harassment. Textbook witness intimidation. But here's what you're going to do. Nothing. Let them waste money on legal threats. Let them generate evidence. We'll file in August, right after Phase 2 is complete. By then, all 77 homes will be sold. Victoria will have collected every penny, and they'll have nowhere to hide. She pulled out a yellow legal pad, started making notes. Meanwhile, keep collecting water samples, weekly measurements. I want a clear timeline of ecosystem decline. And Marcus, document every interaction. Every letter, every phone call, every deputy visit, it's all evidence. I left her office feeling simultaneously better and worse. Better because Sharon was confident. Worse because the harassment was going to continue, probably get worse, and all I could do was take pictures and wait. June and July, Phase 2 rose like time-lapse video. 30 more houses, identical to the first 47. Gray siding, metal roofs, massive windows facing the dying lake. Families moved in throughout July. A young couple with a newborn, a retired teacher, a software engineer working remotely. I watched them hang hummingbird feeders, plant gardens, teach their kids to swim in water that was already showing signs of stress, and I felt sick. These weren't villains. They'd saved for years, believed Victoria's marketing about pristine wilderness and sustainable living, trusted that adults don't lie about things this big. They had no idea they'd bought houses on stolen land next to a dying lake. But every week my water samples told the same story. Dissolved oxygen dropping, nitrogen increasing from septic systems and lawn chemicals, algae blooms appearing in late June, a month earlier than normal. The blooms were thicker, covered more area, lasted longer. Earl's logbook showed normal summer algae, but this was different. This was ecosystem collapse in slow motion. I sat in Earl's cabin one night in late July, reading his note again. The lake don't care about your plans, respect it, or it'll teach you. Victoria was about to learn that lesson, and the tuition was going to cost her everything she'd built. August 3rd, Sharon called me at 6 a.m. Her voice had an edge I hadn't heard before. We have her, she said. The smoking gun. Victoria's former employee kept copies of everything. I was making coffee in Earl's cabin, watching the sunrise turn the lake orange. What? Janet Wu, former title researcher for Ashford Development Group. Victoria fired her in March for questioning the property boundaries. Janet was thorough, kept asking why the surveys didn't match county records. Victoria told her to stop being difficult and just process the paperwork. When Janet pushed back, she was terminated. Is that legal? Doesn't matter, because Janet kept copies of everything, including an email from Kenneth Chen to Victoria dated January 18, 2023, 2 months before they started construction on Phase 2. Sharon forwarded it to me. I opened it on my phone, hands shaking so bad I almost dropped it, from kenneth.chen@clearwatercapital.com to victoria.ashfordchen@ashforddevelopment.com. Subject: Thornhill Property Risk Assessment. Date: January 18, 2023. Vic, Janet found a problem, period. The Thornhill parcel open parenthesis 23 acres, Lake Clearwater. Close parenthesis isn't actually abandoned, period. Owner is Marcus Thornhill, grandson of Earl Thornhill, period. He's been paying property taxes continuously, last payment, October 2022, period. He also renewed DNR water rights for Stony Creek in April 2022, period. Legally, comma, our adverse possession claim won't hold, period. He has documentation and active permits, period. However, comma, he had major back surgery in June and hasn't visited the property in 8 months, period. If we move fast, dash finish, phase 2, comma, sell all 77 homes before he recovers, dash we create enough chaos that he either settles cheap or gets buried in litigation costs with 77 families suing him, period. Worst case, colon, we build everything, comma, declare bankruptcy, comma, let title insurance sort it out, period. We've done this before. Open parenthesis, Park City 2019, close parenthesis, period, risk level, colon, medium, period, reward level, colon, 68 million, gross, period. Recommend, colon, proceed, period. Fire Janet, open parenthesis, she's too ethical, close parenthesis, period. Start phase 2 immediately, period. Dash K, I read it 3 times. They'd known, from the beginning. Known I owned the property, known I was paying taxes, known I had legal water rights. And they'd built anyway. Calculated the risk like a business decision. Called it medium risk. Mentioned doing this before in Park City. Planned bankruptcy as their exit strategy. Sharon, I said, this is premeditated fraud. This is criminal conspiracy. We're not filing a civil property dispute anymore, Marcus. We're filing criminal charges with the Minnesota Attorney General. Kenneth and Victoria are looking at 10 years federal prison for real estate fraud, conspiracy, and bribery of public officials. When do we file? August 12th. I'm finishing the complaint now. 47 pages. We're naming Victoria, Kenneth, Ashford Development Group, Northern Lakes Title Group, and County Commissioner Roger Steinbeck. Criminal fraud, conspiracy, environmental violations, bribery, and intentional trespass. We're also requesting an emergency injunction to halt all sales, freeze their accounts, and prevent any property transfers. My heart was pounding. This is really happening. This is really happening. First court date is August 28th. Judge Patricia Nordstrom. She hates developers who cut corners. Denied permits for 3 projects last year because they tried to bypass environmental reviews. If we can prove they knew and proceeded anyway, she'll throw the book at them. What do I need to do? Stay quiet. Don't contact Victoria. Don't post anything online. And Marcus, prepare yourself. They're going to hit back hard. Desperate people do desperate things. August 12th, Sharon filed the complaint in Hennepin County District Court. I wasn't there, but she called me after. It's done, she said. They'll be served tomorrow morning. After that, all hell breaks loose. She was right. August 20th, 8 days before our first court date, Rachel called me at 11 p.m. I was already in bed, back aching from a day of collecting water samples. Dad, have you seen Facebook? I hadn't used Facebook in years. Barely remembered my password. Rachel, you need to see this. Right now, I got up, found my laptop, logged in. Found the Lake Clearwater Community Group. Top post, pinned by the moderator, written by Victoria herself. Alert: dangerous individual threatening our community. Residents, please be aware that Marcus Thornhill, a disgruntled former fisherman, has been stalking our neighborhood for months, period. He claims to, quote, own, quote, Lake Clearwater, and has threatened to, quote, poison our water supply, quote, and, quote, destroy property values, quote, period. Mr. Period Thornhill has a history of aggressive behavior and has been photographing our children, period. Sheriff's Department is aware, period. Please report any sightings immediately, period. Lock your doors, period. Protect your families, period. We moved here for peace and safety, period. We won't let one angry local destroy our dream, period. The post had been up for 2 hours. 217 comments already. I scrolled through them, stomach sinking with every line. Someone should run this guy out of town. I saw his truck yesterday near the boat launch. Looked dangerous. Called the sheriff. Why isn't he arrested? If he's threatening people, that's criminal. Typical local who hates anyone successful. My husband dealt with people like this in California. They think they own everything. This is exactly why we need better mental health services in rural areas. Someone had posted a photo of my truck. License plate clearly visible. Caption: This is his vehicle, period. Stay alert, everyone, period. Another comment: I have kids who swim in that lake, period. If he poisons the water, he better pray the cops get to him before we do, period. Rachel was crying when I called her back. Dad, someone sent this to my medical school email. My classmates are asking if I'm related to you, if you're dangerous. One of my professors pulled me aside and asked if everything's okay at home. My chest felt like someone was standing on it. Couldn't breathe right. Rachel screenshot everything, every comment, every share. Forward it all to Sharon. Don't respond to anyone. But Dad, trust me. Sharon said this means we're winning. They're panicking. It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like they're destroying your life. I know. But we're 8 days from court. We just have to hold on. After we hung up, I spent 3 hours documenting the post. 217 comments became 384. Then, 512. The shares were climbing. Someone had created a hashtag. Hashtag Stop Marcus Thornhill. People were using it to post theories about my mental state, my criminal history I didn't have, my supposed threats against children. One woman wrote a whole paragraph about seeing me watching her kids at the beach. I'd never seen her before in my life. But 17 people commented agreeing they'd seen the same thing. False memories spreading like algae bloom. I called Sharon at 1 a.m. She answered immediately. I saw it. I've been documenting since it went up. Marcus, this is defamation. Textbook libel. We're adding it to the lawsuit. Every share, every comment, every false accusation. It's all evidence of malicious intent to destroy your reputation. My daughter's getting harassed. People think I'm dangerous. I know. And it's exactly what Victoria wants. She's trying to destroy your credibility before trial, poison the jury pool, make you look unstable. But Marcus, she just handed us a nuclear weapon. She put it in writing, public forum, her name attached. She accused you of threatening to poison water supplies. That's actionable defamation per se. We're going to take everything she owns. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat in Earl's cabin, watching the lake through the window, thinking about how easy it is to destroy someone's reputation. How fast lies spread. How people believe what they want to believe. August 23rd, 5 days before court, I got a call from Bud Sorensen. He owned the marina where I'd been doing boat repair work since my injury. Bud and I had known each other for 30 years. Marcus, we gotta talk. His voice was strained. I drove over. Bud was standing in his shop, grease under his fingernails, guilt on his face like a visible rash. I got 3 calls this morning from customers. They saw the Facebook post. They're asking if you still work here, saying they don't feel safe bringing their boats in if you're around. Said if I keep employing you, they'll take their business elsewhere. Bud, I've worked for you for 12 years. You know that post is garbage. I know. And I know it's not fair. But Marcus, I got a business to run. Wife's got medical bills from her hip surgery. I can't afford to lose customers. He couldn't look at me. I'm putting you on unpaid leave until this gets sorted. The words hit like a physical blow. How long? Until the court case is resolved. Could be months. I'm sorry, Marcus, I really am. I walked to my truck past Jenny Martinez, who ran the bait shop next door. Jenny and I had been friendly for years. Helped her move equipment when she'd renovated last spring. She saw me coming and literally went back inside her shop, locked the door. I watched through the window as she flipped the sign to closed. Middle of the day. Closed because I was in the parking lot. That's when I understood Victoria's strategy. She wasn't just attacking my legal case, she was attacking my ability to exist in my own community. My job, my reputation, my daughter's education, everything. Make me so desperate I'd sign anything just to make it stop. I drove home to my rental house in town. The place I'd been staying since my surgery because Earl's cabin was too hard to access with my back injury. Small 2-bedroom ranch, $600 a month. Landlord was a guy named Pete who'd fished with Earl. Found spray paint across the garage door. Red letters 2 feet high. Leave or else. I called Mike Haugen. He showed up 20 minutes later, took photos with the enthusiasm of a man doing paperwork he knew wouldn't matter. Any idea who did this? Check the Facebook mob. 500 people who think I'm dangerous. Marcus, I can file a report, but without witnesses or video, there's not much I can do. So they just get away with it. He looked miserable. I'll increase patrols on your street. That's all I can offer. After Mike left, I tried to paint over it. Primer coat that didn't quite cover the red. My back gave out halfway through. Ended up sitting on the driveway, brush in hand, feeling like the biggest failure in Minnesota. Rachel drove up 2 hours later. Didn't call first, just showed up. Found me still sitting there. Dad, you're staying at my apartment. I can't drive to Minneapolis twice a week for water samples. Then I'll drive you. She grabbed my arm, pulled me up. You're not staying here. Not with people spray painting threats on your house. Rachel? No arguments. Pack a bag. We're leaving in 10 minutes. I stayed at Rachel's apartment in Minneapolis for 5 days. Slept on her couch, watched her study for med school exams, felt like I was imposing on her life. But she wouldn't let me leave. Made me coffee every morning. Made sure I took my pain medication. Drove me to physical therapy. August 25th, 3 days before court, my landlord Pete called. Marcus, I need to talk to you about your lease. I'm paid through September. Due date's the 1st. I know, but I got a call from my insurance company. They're saying with all the vandalism and police reports, your tenancy constitutes an increased risk. They're threatening to drop my coverage if you stay. Pete, I've been a perfect tenant. Never late on rent. Never caused problems, I know, and I feel like garbage about this, but without insurance, I can't rent to anyone. I'm giving you notice. You got 30 days to find a new place. So I'm being evicted because someone else vandalized your property? Technically, it's non-renewal of lease. But yeah, I'm sorry, Marcus. I really am. I hung up and stared at Rachel's ceiling. Lost my job, lost my reputation, about to lose my housing. All because I had the audacity to own property someone else wanted. Rachel came home from class, found me sitting in the dark. Dad? I told her everything. Job, housing, the Facebook mob. She sat down next to me, grabbed my hand. We're going to win, she said. Voice fierce. Sharon's going to destroy them. And when it's over, you'll have your property back and Victoria will have nothing. What if we don't win? What if the judge believes her? Then we appeal, and we keep fighting. But Dad, that email from Kenneth? That's proof. Written proof they knew they were committing fraud. There's no defense against that. She was right, but knowing you're right doesn't pay rent, doesn't get your job back, doesn't erase 500 people who think you're dangerous. August 27th, the night before court, I got a text from an unknown number. Drop the lawsuit or everyone finds out what you really are. I forwarded it to Sharon. She texted back immediately. Perfect. Bring your phone to court tomorrow. We're going to bury them. I didn't sleep that night. Just lay on Rachel's couch, watching headlights move across the ceiling, thinking about Earl. He'd bought that land with honest money, maintained it with honest work, left it to me with one request. Don't let the bastards take what's yours. Tomorrow, in a courtroom in Hennepin County, I was going to honor that request. Or die trying. The Hennepin County courthouse smelled like floor wax and old wood. Rachel and I arrived at 8:30 for a 9 o'clock hearing. She'd taken the day off from classes. Wore a professional dress she'd bought for hospital rotations. Wanted to look respectable, she said. Wanted the judge to see I had family who believed in me. Sharon met us in the hallway outside courtroom 4B. She wore a navy suit that looked expensive, carried a leather briefcase that had seen some miles. Her gray braid was wrapped in a bun. She looked like someone who won things. You ready? She asked. I wasn't. My hands were sweating. I'd worn my only suit, the one I'd bought for Earl's funeral 4 years ago. Navy blue with a small stain on the sleeve I'd tried to spot clean. Work boots because I didn't own dress shoes. Cane because my back couldn't handle standing without it. Do we have enough? We have a nuclear bomb. Sharon checked her watch. Victoria's lawyer filed a motion to dismiss yesterday at 4:57 p.m. classic delay tactic. Judge Nordstrom hates that. She's going to be furious before we even start. We walked into the courtroom. It was packed. All 77 families from Clearwater Estates had received notices about the hearing. At least 40 of them had shown up. I recognized some faces. The young couple with the newborn, the retired teacher, the software engineer, all of them looking at me like I was the villain in their story. Victoria sat at the defendant's table with 3 lawyers. Caroline Westbrook, her personal attorney, a man in his 60s I didn't recognize, and Kenneth Chen's lawyer, a woman who looked like she ate weaker lawyers for breakfast. Kenneth sat next to Victoria, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my truck. He was whispering to the lawyers, all of them looking calm, confident. Victoria saw me and smiled. Actually smiled. Like she'd already won. Like this was just a formality before she went back to selling houses on my land. All rise. Judge Patricia Nordstrom entering. We all stood. Judge Nordstrom was in her 50s, gray hair cut short, reading glasses on a chain, zero patience in her expression. She sat down, gestured for us to sit. Be seated. Case number 2023 CV08847, Flint versus Ashford Development LLC and associated parties. She looked over her reading glasses at Caroline Westbrook. Counselor, I received your motion to dismiss at 5 p.m. yesterday. You want to explain why you think filing a major motion 17 hours before a hearing is appropriate? Caroline stood. Your Honor, the plaintiff's claim is defective on its face. Ashford Development holds clear title via adverse possession and county environmental recovery authorization. Mr. Flint abandoned the property for over 8 months. Under Minnesota statute. Did he pay property taxes? Judge Nordstrom interrupted. Well, yes, but then adverse possession fails under Minnesota statute 541.02. What else do you have? I watched Caroline's confidence crack like thin ice. Your Honor, the title company conducted a thorough search. Miss Kovalenko. The judge turned to Sharon. What am I looking at here? Sharon stood, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped 5 degrees. Your Honor, we're not here to debate adverse possession. That claim is frivolous and defendants know it. We're here because the defendants knowingly committed fraud. She opened her briefcase, pulled out a document. I'd like to submit Exhibit A, an internal email from Kenneth Chen to Victoria Ashford Chen, dated January 18, 2023. She handed copies to the judge and to Caroline. I watched Caroline's face go white as paper. Judge Nordstrom read it, and her eyebrows went up. Counselor Westbrook, did you know about this email? Your Honor, I've never seen that document. It was submitted in discovery last week, Sharon said smoothly. Perhaps it got lost in your office. Judge Nordstrom looked at Kenneth and Victoria. Is this email authentic? Kenneth started to stand, but his lawyer grabbed his arm. Your Honor, we need to consult with our clients. That sounds like a yes. The judge closed the folder. Here's what's going to happen. Motion to dismiss is denied. This case is proceeding to trial expedited schedule. In the meantime, I'm issuing a temporary restraining order. Ashford Development will cease all sales, marketing, and transfer of property related to Clearwater Estates pending resolution. She looked directly at Victoria. And Mrs. Ashford Chen, if I see one more Facebook post, one more anonymous tip to DNR, one more threat directed at Mr. Thornhill, I will hold you in contempt. Are we clear? Victoria's face had gone from confident to ashen. Yes, Your Honor, she whispered. Trial is set for September 15th. Discovery deadline is September 1st. I want all evidence, all witnesses, all expert reports filed by that date. She banged her gavel. Next case. Walking out of the courthouse, Rachel grabbed my hand. We won, Dad. Sharon shook her head. That was round 1. We embarrassed them. Now they're going to come at us with everything they have. Discovery is going to be brutal. They'll depose you, try to find inconsistencies, attack your credibility. But we have the email. We do. And it's damning. But Marcus, prepare yourself. The next 2 weeks are going to be hell. She was right. But for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Judge Nordstrom had believed us, had shut down Victoria's motion before she could even argue it, had seen through the lies to the truth underneath. That night, Rachel and I bought pizza we couldn't afford and ate it in her tiny apartment. My phone buzzed every 5 minutes. Tom Berkshire from DNR congratulating me. Mike Haugen apologizing for doubting me. Dennis Halverson, Earl's old lawyer, saying Earl would be proud. But the message that mattered came from Sharon at 9:47 p.m. My office tomorrow, 10 a.m. Bring coffee, we're building the kill shot. September 1st, discovery deadline, Sharon called me at 7 in the morning. Voice tight with excitement. Janet Wu found more emails. Kenneth and Victoria have been running this scam for 8 years. 4 other developments, same pattern, millions in fraud. I was back at Earl's cabin, collecting morning water samples. The algae had gotten worse overnight. Thick green mats covering maybe 20% of the lake's surface now. I could smell it from shore. That rotten egg smell of dying water. What did she find? Park City, 2019. Scottsdale, 2017. Bend, Oregon, 2020. Tahoe, 2021. 4 developments where they found properties with unclear titles, filed bogus claims, built quickly, sold everything, then declared bankruptcy when the real owners sued. They've made over $200 million doing this. How are they not in prison? Because they always settled before trial, paid the real owners 30 to 40 cents on the dollar, made them sign NDAs, moved on to the next project. The victims were always elderly, poor, or didn't have resources to fight. But Marcus, you're different. You have documentation, you have Earl's logbooks, you have DNR permits, and you have me. She paused. We're not settling. We're going to trial, and we're going to destroy them so completely they'll never do this again. When's trial? September 15th. 2 weeks. Kenneth's deposition is this afternoon. Victoria's is tomorrow. I want you there for both. I want them to see your face when they're forced to tell the truth. Kenneth Chen's deposition was in a glass-walled conference room on the 14th floor of a downtown Minneapolis office building. Through the windows, you could see the city spread out below, all steel and glass and money. Kenneth arrived in a black Tesla, wearing a suit that probably cost $5,000. His lawyer, Diane Morrison, looked like she'd been doing this for 30 years and won more than she lost. She sat next to Kenneth with a legal pad and the kind of calm that comes from expensive retainer fees. The court reporter swore Kenneth in. Sharon started gentle, just background questions. Name, occupation, relationship to Ashford Development Group. Kenneth answered in a flat monotone, like he'd done this before. Probably had. Then Sharon pulled out the January 18th email. Mr. Chen, do you recognize this document? Kenneth glanced at it. I do. Did you write it? Yes. So you knew in January of 2023 that Marcus Thornhill was the legal owner of the Lake Clearwater property. Diane leaned forward. Don't answer that. Your Honor granted full discovery rights, Sharon said. He has to answer. Kenneth shifted in his chair. I knew someone named Thornhill was listed in county records. But our title company advised us the property was effectively abandoned under environmental necessity provisions. Which title company? Northern Lakes Title Group. Sharon made a note. And did Northern Lakes Title Group provide documentation of these environmental necessity provisions? They provided their professional assessment. That's not what I asked. Did they provide written documentation of environmental necessity provisions that would override property rights? Kenneth's jaw tightened. I'd have to check our files. Sharon pulled out another document. This is Northern Lakes Title Group's assessment report dated February 2023. It says, and I quote, assessment based solely on county claim filed by Ashford Development. No independent verification conducted. Recommend client obtain legal counsel before proceeding. Close quote. She looked up. Did you obtain legal counsel? We consulted with our attorneys. Did your attorneys tell you that adverse possession requires 15 years of continuous occupation and tax payments by the claimant? I'm not a lawyer, but you've developed real estate for 23 years, correct? You understand property law basics? Objection. Diane's voice was sharp. I'll rephrase. Sharon pulled out 3 more documents. Mr. Chen, in 2017, you settled a property dispute in Scottsdale for $2.3 million. In 2019, you settled a similar case in Park City for $4.7 million. In 2020, Bend, Oregon, $1.8 million. All cases involved claims that you'd built on property you didn't own, correct? We resolved those matters amicably. You paid the property owners to go away before trial, because you knew you'd lose, just like you knew you'd lose this case. Objection. Diane stood up. You're badgering the witness. Sharon smiled. I'll move on. Mr. Chen, your email says, quote, we've done this before. Park City 2019, close quote. What did you mean by that? Kenneth was sweating now, visible drops on his forehead despite the air conditioning. I meant we'd successfully resolved a similar dispute. By building on someone else's property, collecting millions in sales, then declaring bankruptcy, we followed legal procedures, including bribing county officials. Sharon pulled out bank records. County Commissioner Roger Steinbeck received $25,000 from you between December 2022 and March 2023. $15,000 as a consulting fee, $10,000 as a campaign donation. 1 week after the final payment, he approved your development permits. Coincidence? Kenneth looked at Diane. She was writing furiously on her legal pad, but her face had gone pale. Sharon asked 70 more questions, each one tighter than the last. By 3 p.m., Kenneth had contradicted himself 6 times. His lawyer called for breaks twice. The second time, I watched them argue in the hallway through the glass walls. Diane's arms were crossed. Kenneth was gesturing frantically. When they came back, Kenneth looked defeated. Sharon asked one more question. Mr. Chen, did you know you were committing fraud when you built on Marcus Thornhill's property? Diane grabbed his arm. Don't answer that. We're done here. Sharon closed her notebook. No further questions. Victoria's deposition was the next day. Same conference room, same view, different energy. Victoria arrived alone. No Kenneth. Her lawyer, Caroline Westbrook, looked tired, like she hadn't slept. Victoria wore a cream suit, pearl earrings, her hair perfect, but her hands were shaking when she reached for the water glass. Sharon started the same way. Background questions. Then, Mrs. Ashford Chen, when did you first learn that Marcus Thornhill owned the Lake Clearwater property? Caroline started to object, but Victoria cut her off. I found out in January when Janet Wu brought it to my attention. And what did you do with that information? We consulted with our legal team and determined the property was abandoned under environmental protection statutes. Which statutes specifically? Victoria blinked. I'm not a lawyer. I relied on professional advice. From whom? Caroline Westbrook and our title company. Sharon pulled out another email. This is from you to Kenneth, dated January 22nd, 2023, 4 days after his risk assessment email. It says, quote, Kenneth's right. If we move fast enough, Thornhill won't be able to stop us. His back injury gives us a 6-month window. Let's use it. Close quote. She looked up. That doesn't sound like someone relying on professional legal advice. That sounds like someone exploiting an injured man's inability to defend his property. Victoria's face flushed red. I was referring to the business timeline. You posted on Facebook that Marcus Thornhill was dangerous, that he threatened to poison the water supply. Do you have any evidence of those threats? That was based on community concerns. Show me one piece of evidence, one text, one email, one witness who heard him make these threats. Silence. You don't have any, Sharon said, because he never made those threats. You invented them to destroy his reputation before trial. You orchestrated a harassment campaign including false DNR complaints, false police reports, and public defamation. Why? Caroline stood up. My client invokes her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination and will not answer further questions. Sharon leaned back. That's all I needed to hear. September 15th, trial day. Rachel drove me to the courthouse. I'd barely slept. Kept thinking about Earl, about 66 years of careful work, about what it means to leave something good behind. The courtroom was even more packed than the first hearing. News cameras were set up outside, reporters asking questions I didn't answer. Inside, all 77 families filled the gallery, but this time, some of them were looking at Victoria differently. The Facebook post had been taken down after the judge's order, and people had started asking questions. Judge Nordstrom entered at 9 sharp. Opening statements. Sharon went first. Your Honor, this case is simple. Marcus Thornhill owns 23 acres of lakefront property purchased by his grandfather in 1958. He has 66 years of documentation, current tax payments, and active DNR water rights permits. The defendants knew this. We have emails proving they knew. They built anyway because they believed they could bury Mr. Thornhill in legal costs before he could fight back. They were wrong. She walked toward Victoria's table. This isn't about property law. It's about two people who've made a career of stealing land from people who can't defend themselves. 4 previous developments, $200 million in fraudulent profits, dozens of victims silenced with settlements and NDAs. But Marcus Thornhill kept receipts. And today, the defendants pay for every crime they've committed. Caroline Westbrook stood for the defense. She argued that the title company made an honest mistake, that Victoria and Kenneth relied on professional advice, that adverse possession law is complex and often misunderstood. But Judge Nordstrom wasn't buying it. The emails, Your Honor, Caroline said, those were taken out of context. The judge held up Kenneth's email. The context is pretty clear, counselor. Quote, "We've done this before. Park City 2019, close quote." What context makes that innocent? Caroline had no answer. Sharon called witnesses. Tom Berkshire from DNR testified about Marcus's valid water rights permits, uninterrupted since 1972, about Earl's meticulous documentation, about Victoria's false complaints designed to harass. Janet Wu testified about being fired for questioning the property boundaries, about Kenneth's explicit instructions to ignore the survey discrepancies, about the pattern of fraud across multiple developments. Dennis Halvorson, Earl's lawyer, testified about the property's clear title, about Earl's legendary record-keeping, about Marcus's continuous tax payments. Martha from the county clerk's office testified about Victoria's $15,000 payment to Commissioner Steinbeck, about the non-existent environmental recovery program. Each witness added another nail. By noon, Caroline looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. Then Sharon called her expert witness, Dr. Lisa Yamamoto, environmental scientist from the University of Minnesota. She'd analyzed my water samples from March through September. Dr. Yamamoto, what did you find? Dramatic ecosystem decline. She pulled up charts on a screen. In March, dissolved oxygen levels were at 7.2 milligrams per liter, which is healthy. By September, they dropped to 3.8, which indicates severe stress. Nitrogen levels tripled due to septic system runoff and lawn fertilizers. Algae blooms increased by 400%. What's causing this decline? The development. 77 homes on property that was previously forested. The trees and vegetation that used to filter runoff and stabilize soil are gone. Stormwater now flows directly into the lake, carrying pollutants. Additionally, the natural water flow from Stony Creek has been disrupted by landscaping and construction. The lake is suffocating. How long before the lake becomes uninhabitable? At this rate, 18 to 24 months before fish populations collapse entirely. The property marketed as pristine lake access will become a stagnant, algae-covered pond worth substantially less than buyers paid. A murmur went through the courtroom. I saw the retired teacher put her hand over her mouth. The young couple with the baby looked horrified. Sharon turned to Judge Nordstrom. Your Honor, the defendants didn't just steal property. They sold 77 families a lie. Those homes were marketed as eco-luxury with pristine water access. But the defendant's own development is destroying the very resource that makes the property valuable. Victoria was crying, quiet tears running down her face, smearing her makeup. Kenneth was stone-faced, but his hands were clenched into fists. Caroline called no witnesses. What could she say? The evidence was overwhelming. Closing arguments at 3 p.m. Sharon kept it short. Your Honor, Marcus Thornhill did everything right. Paid his taxes, maintained his permits, documented everything. The defendants did everything wrong. Knew they were trespassing, built anyway, lied to buyers, destroyed the lake ecosystem. The law is clear. The facts are clear. We ask for full restitution, criminal referral, and justice. Judge Nordstrom didn't even leave the bench. Didn't need to deliberate. I've seen a lot of property cases, she said, but I've never seen fraud this blatant or this calculated. The defendants knew Marcus Thornhill owned the property. They knew their claim was baseless. They proceeded anyway because they've made a career of bullying people who can't fight back. She looked directly at Victoria and Kenneth. You picked the wrong person this time. Judgment for the plaintiff on all counts. Marcus Thornhill is awarded full title to the 23 acres, including all structures currently on the property. Defendants are ordered to pay $4.2 million in compensatory damages and $8 million in punitive damages. All sales contracts are void. Ashford Development Group is hereby dissolved. Additionally, I'm referring this case to the Minnesota Attorney General for criminal prosecution. The evidence of fraud, conspiracy, and bribery is overwhelming. She banged her gavel. Mr. Thornhill, your grandfather would be proud. The courtroom erupted, reporters rushing out to file stories, families crying, some in relief, some in confusion. Rachel grabbed me in a hug so tight I could barely breathe. We won, Dad. We actually won. Sharon was packing her briefcase, smiling wider than I'd seen. That's how you practice law, she said, with receipts. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded us. Cameras, microphones, shouted questions. Sharon had told me what to say. My grandfather Earl taught me that respect isn't given, it's earned. Victoria Ashford Chen and Kenneth Chen tried to take what he'd earned. They tried to destroy my reputation. They failed. Because documentation beats lies every single time, a reporter called out. What happens to the families who bought homes? I looked at the camera. Those families are innocent victims. They're keeping their homes. I'll be establishing a land trust so they can own their properties at the prices they paid. Nobody gets hurt except the people who committed fraud. That clip played on every news station in Minnesota that night. My phone exploded. Messages from people I hadn't talked to in years. Bud Sorensen from the marina apologizing, offering my job back. Pete, my landlord, saying I could stay as long as I wanted. Jenny from the bait shop leaving a voicemail that was half crying, half apologizing. But the message that mattered came from Mike Haugen, the deputy who'd warned me away from my own property. Marcus, I owe you an apology. What they did to you was wrong, and I should have seen it. I'm putting in a complaint against Sheriff Randall for taking their money. Some of us still believe in doing the right thing. 2 days after the trial, Victoria and Kenneth's assets were frozen. Federal marshals seized their Tesla, their Aspen vacation home, their investment accounts. Everything going to pay the judgment and compensate victims of their previous frauds. Northern Lakes Title Group lost their license. Caroline Westbrook resigned from her law firm to avoid disbarment. County Commissioner Roger Steinbeck was indicted for bribery. His trial was set for November. Kenneth and Victoria were indicted on 14 federal fraud charges: wire fraud, conspiracy, environmental crimes, bribery. Their lawyer negotiated a plea deal. Kenneth got 6 years federal prison, Victoria got 4, both agreed to testify against Steinbeck, but for me the real victory came 3 weeks after trial, October 8th. I called a town hall meeting at what used to be Clearwater Estates, was now officially Thornhill Commons. All 77 families showed up, some still scared, some angry, some just confused. They gathered in the unfinished clubhouse Victoria had promised but never built. I stood at the front with Sharon and Rachel. I know you're scared, I started. You bought homes in good faith. You did nothing wrong. You're victims of Victoria and Kenneth's fraud, just like I am. So here's what I'm proposing. The room went silent. I'm establishing the Thornhill Commons Land Trust, a nonprofit that will own the land. Each family will own their home through the trust at the exact price you originally paid. If you paid $625,000, you owe nothing more. If you still have mortgage payments, you finish them to the trust at 0 interest. No tricks, no hidden fees, no price increases. Someone gasped. The young couple with the baby started crying. The trust will use those funds to maintain roads, cover property taxes, and restore the lake ecosystem. Dr. Yamamoto has agreed to oversee a 5-year restoration project. We're going to replant native vegetation, install proper runoff filtration, and bring Stony Creek back to its natural flow pattern. In 5 years, Lake Clearwater will be healthy again. The retired teacher raised her hand. Why would you do this? Because my grandfather Earl taught me that land isn't about profit. It's about legacy. He maintained that property for 66 years so it could be passed down healthy and whole. Victoria tried to destroy that. I'm going to restore it, and you're going to help me. Additionally, I'm establishing the Earl Thornhill Memorial Scholarship, $10,000 annually for a Minnesota student studying environmental science or freshwater ecology. My grandfather believed in understanding water. Some kid who believes the same thing is going to get help paying for college. The applause started slowly, then built like thunder. People standing, clapping, some crying. The software engineer came up after, shook my hand. "Mr. Thornhill, I'm an attorney. I'd like to help establish the land trust. Pro bono. The retired teacher. I taught elementary science for 30 years. I'll volunteer for the lake restoration project." One by one, 77 families who'd been victims became partners, building something Victoria had tried to steal but ended up creating anyway. A real community, one based on truth instead of lies. I kept 5 acres for myself at the north end of the property, the section with the old-growth pines Earl had refused to log. Built a small cabin there, 2 bedrooms, stone fireplace, solar panels. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. Moved in last November. Wake up every morning to the smell of pine and coffee. Watch the mist rise off Lake Clearwater like it's been doing since long before Earl bought the land, long before Victoria tried to steal it. The lake's coming back. Slowly, but measurably. Dr. Yamamoto's restoration project started in April. We've replanted over 2,000 native shrubs and trees along the shoreline, installed bioswales to filter storm water, restored Stony Creek to its natural channel. The water quality samples I collect every week show steady improvement. Dissolved oxygen climbing, nitrogen dropping, algae blooms decreasing. Rachel visits most weekends. She's in her 3rd year of med school now, talking about specializing in rural medicine. Says watching me fight taught her something about not backing down. She helps with the water testing, takes notes like Earl used to. I think he'd like that. Continuity. Even brought her boyfriend up last month. Nice kid, law student at Mitchell Hamline, spent the whole weekend asking about water rights law. I gave him Earl's logbooks to read. He handled them like they were sacred texts. Maybe they are. The Earl Thornhill Memorial Scholarship launched in January. First recipient was a girl from Bemidji named Sarah Whitehorse, Ojibwe, first in her family going to college. Studying freshwater ecology at University of Minnesota. Her application essay was about how her tribe's reservation lake was dying from agricultural runoff, and she wanted to learn how to save it. When I called to tell her she'd won, she cried, "Mr. Thornhill, this changes everything. My family can't afford tuition. I was going to have to work full-time and go part-time. Now I can focus on studying." That's what Earl would have wanted, I told her. Someone who understands that water doesn't belong to anyone. We just borrow it for a while. She sent me a photo last week. Her standing in a lab at the university holding a water sample, biggest smile I've ever seen. That photo's on my fridge now, held up by a magnet shaped like a fish. The Thornhill Commons Land Trust is thriving. 77 families own their homes free and clear now. Monthly trust fees cover maintenance, taxes, and the restoration project. We elected a board. The retired teacher, the software engineer attorney, a nurse, a construction foreman, and me. We meet once a month in the Finnish clubhouse. Last month, we voted to ban all lawn chemicals within 200 feet of the shoreline. Unanimous decision. People understand now that their actions affect the whole lake. That's what Victoria never got. You can't just take from nature without giving back. Tom Berkshire from DNR came out last month to renew my water rights permits. Stood on the dock with me, looking at the lake. Marcus, in 30 years with DNR, I've never seen a development flip from disaster to success like this. Usually when it goes bad, it stays bad. You did something special here. Wasn't me. Was Earl. I'm just finishing what he started. Tom shook his head. Earl documented the past. You built a future. That's harder. Mike Haugen stops by sometimes. Brings fish he caught. We cook it on my deck. He quit the sheriff's department after Randall refused to resign despite the scandal. Mike's working for the county now, code enforcement. Says he wanted a job where he helps people instead of politics. We don't talk about the Facebook post or the garage spray paint, water under the bridge. Literally. Bud Sorensen gave me my job back at the marina. Offered me a raise, actually. I turned it down. Told him to give the raise to his newest employee instead. I don't need much. Disability check, occasional repair work, money from the trust for managing the land. I'm comfortable. Jenny from the bait shop still can't look me in the eye. That's okay. Some apologies take longer than others. My old landlord Pete sold that rental house, took the spray paint evidence off the garage door first, framed it, gave it to me. Said it was a reminder that some people will always try to tear you down, but documentation beats lies. I hung it in my workshop. Motivational art. Victoria and Kenneth started their prison sentences in January. Kenneth's at a federal facility in Wisconsin, Victoria's in Minnesota. They'll serve about 4 years with good behavior. Lost everything. Houses, cars, investment accounts, reputation. Their previous victims filed civil suits. There's nothing left to take. Caroline Westbrook, their lawyer, moved to Florida. Heard she's working for a title company now. Not as a lawyer, just administrative. Ironic. Commissioner Steinbeck's trial ended in February. Guilty on all counts. 18 months in county jail, banned from public office for life. The bribes Victoria paid him cost him everything he'd spent 30 years building. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd signed that quit-claim deed. $25,000. Would have covered Rachel's tuition for 1 semester. Seemed like so much money when I was broke and desperate, but Earl's note kept echoing. Don't let the bastards take what's yours. Sharon Kovalenko became something of a celebrity after the case. Law schools bring her in to lecture about water rights. She always tells them about Earl's logbooks. Documentation isn't glamorous, she says, but it's how regular people beat corporations. She calls me every few months, checking in, making sure I'm okay. Sent me a bill once. $73,000 in attorney fees plus court costs. Victoria and Kenneth's seized assets paid every penny. I owed nothing. That's justice, she said. The guilty party pays everyone's bills. I asked her what Earl would have thought of all this. The trial, the land trust, the scholarship. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I think he'd say you respected the lake, and that's all that matters. Last week, the young couple with the baby invited me over for dinner. Their daughter's 2 now, running around their backyard, chasing fireflies. They've planted a garden, tomatoes, peppers, herbs, everything organic, because they understand now that chemicals end up in the lake. After dinner, the husband walked me out to my truck. Mr. Thornhill, when we bought this house, we thought we were buying into luxury. Turns out we bought into something better. Community. People who actually care about each other in this lake. That's worth more than granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. His wife called out from the porch. We're teaching Emma to fish next summer. Would you show her how? The way your grandfather taught you? I would be honored, I said. Driving home that night, windows down, cool June air carrying the smell of pine and water, I thought about legacy. Earl spent 66 years maintaining a lake. I spent 8 months fighting for it. That girl, Sarah Whitehorse, will spend her career saving others. Victoria thought she could steal it all with paperwork and money and false claims. But she never understood what Earl knew. The lake don't care about your plans. Respect it, or it'll teach you. So here's my question for you. Have you ever dealt with someone who thought they could steamroll you because they had money and you didn't? Someone who tried to steal your property, destroy your reputation, erase everything you'd worked for? Drop your story in the comments. Let's build a library of how regular people beat corrupt systems. And if this story mattered to you, if it reminded you that good people can still win when they refuse to quit, hit that subscribe button. I've got more stories like this. Stories about the little guy outsmarting the machine. Stories with receipts. Next week, I'm telling you about the county that tried to condemn my neighbor's farm through eminent domain for a private golf course. Turns out the county commissioner owned stock in the development company. My neighbor's a retired paralegal who kept better records than the county did. You're going to love how this ends. I'm Marcus Thornhill, 3rd-generation Minnesota fisherman. I drive a 2007 Ford F-250 with rusted wheel wells and a cracked windshield I'm still not going to replace because it reminds me where I came from. Nothing special about me except I knew when to fight and I kept every receipt. Earl taught me something important. Land isn't about ownership. It's about stewardship. You take care of it while you're here, then you pass it on better than you found it. Victoria tried to turn 23 acres into profit. I turned it into legacy. Some nights I sit on my dock with Earl's old fishing rod. The 1960 Evinrude motor still runs. The knife he left me is still sharp. The logbooks still smell like mineral oil and canvas, and the lake still whispers the same thing it's been saying since 1958. Respect me, and I'll take care of you. I think about the 77 families sleeping safe in their homes tonight, about Sarah Whitehorse studying lake ecology in a lab in Minneapolis, about Rachel learning to be a doctor, about that 2-year-old girl who'll learn to fish next summer, about every person Victoria tried to hurt who's doing just fine now, and I think about Earl's note. Don't let the bastards take what's yours. We didn't, Grandpa. We kept it all. The lake, the land, the legacy, and most importantly, the receipts. Remember, keep your receipts. Every single one. You never know when you'll need them to save everything that matters.